The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning or afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeremy Walsh, and I'm the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I would like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. Today's webinar is part of a monthly series on things to know about BNI Connect, and this one is specifically for leadership teams. So today's webinar, as well as tomorrow's webinar, are designed specifically for leadership teams. Today we're going to be talking about the goals program in BNI Connect, and this is based on the Goals Program 101, or the GP 101 series that was developed in part by Tom Fleming from the Florida region of BNI. And what it does is it allows you to establish goals for your chapter based on a number of different chapter success drivers. And then as you enter them, you can also plan on various activities to help support those goals. And what's even better is that throughout the year, you can go back and review those goals as well. So based on the input in the POMS reports and your attendance and referrals and all of that stuff throughout the year, it will update your goals in order to let you know where you stand with them. So again, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Before we get started, let me go ahead and just a couple of housekeeping things to keep in mind. The first of which is that this is a live webinar. So that means that if you have any questions whatsoever as we're going through the material today, feel free to stop me, ask a question, and I'd be happy to answer that question as we're going through the material. If you do have a different question that's completely and totally unrelated to what we're talking about, feel free to ask it anyway. What we'll do is we will reserve as much time as you need at the end of the main portion of content today to answer whatever questions about BNI Connect that you might have. We're scheduled for approximately 30 minutes worth of material. Takes about a half hour to go through the goals program. That being said, I am happy to stay on this call until every single question has been answered. So even if it has nothing to do with the goals, again, the only silly question is the unasked question. So ask away, especially as we get towards the bottom of the hour. I am recording this webinar. We record all of our webinars here with BNI Connect, so you can go back and review them later or share them with somebody else, maybe somebody else on your leadership team, or if you happen to be a director consultant with us today, you'd like to share these with any of your fellow chapter members. You can find the recording in a couple of different places. You can find it on our support site. So if you go to support.bniconnect.com, or this question mark here in the upper right-hand corner of BNI Connect, if you click that, that will bring you over to the support site. You'll see our list of live webinars. And of course, you can view the recorded webinar series as well. We currently have all of our September 2015 series fully loaded up through our webinar a couple of days ago. And this one will be listed there, hopefully within the next 24 to 48 hours. You can also go directly to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. Again, that's youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. We have hundreds of videos up here on our YouTube channel. So we have not only our pretty much every single recorded webinar we've ever done, but we also have things like educational moments. So little short 3 to 5 minute videos that you're welcome to take back to your chapter or share around and get the word out about BNI Connect. All right, so let us go ahead and start with today's content. And again, we're going to be talking about the goals for your chapter. And this is a really important function. We do have a leadership team changeover that's happening for a lot of regions on October 1st. So that means new presidents and new secretaries, new vice presidents or membership coordinators. Whole new teams are coming on board. And this is the perfect time to go ahead and start establishing your goals for this upcoming 6 months in BNI, or if you happen to be in a region that renews their leadership teams for an additional 6 months, you can even come out and plan your goals for an entire 12-month period. Now, the place to do that in BNI Connect is we are going to have to go beyond the home screen here. So the home screen, this is the logged in portion of BNI Connect. This is where we submit all our referrals on a weekly basis and things like that. But we're going to have to dive a little bit deeper today. And people have said over the years, BNI Connect is possibly not the most intuitive system out there. But the way that I remember where to go to find stuff here in BNI Connect is that we do have to go into these menus along the top here. Now, most people will only see the first three options: network, operations, and reports. Network is all the social media stuff. So it's your connections, your testimonials, the discussion groups, things like that. The other two options are where you go for the additional chapter level functionality and reporting. Now, reports here, to start with reports first, reports are read only. You'll only ever get information back out of reports. You can never do any input at all into reports through that menu item. Operations is where you do all the input. It's really where you do all of the chapter management functionality, entering POMs and assigning speakers, and really it's the day-to-day operations of running a chapter in BNI. So in order to establish our goals as a chapter and as a leadership team, we're going to go to the operations menu. So I'm going to click on operations. If you're a director consultant, this is a chapter level function. You can establish these goals for any or all of your chapters. Now, once we get into the operations menu, we have our list of functions down along the left-hand side. Now, this particular function is going to be the goals function, so we can go to manage goals. Now, if you don't see manage goals on here, especially for people that are just going to be coming into office on October 1st, you may not see that function until you come into office. So you may not see it until you become the president or vice president or membership coordinator or secretary treasurer. So don't panic if it's not there yet. It should be there in just about a week or so. But once we get to the Manage Goals function, you should see two things here. We have the Enter Chapter Goals, which is going to allow us to establish our goals. And then the second option there is View Chapter Goals, where after we've gone in and established the goals and we've saved them, you can go in and review them anytime you'd like to. And the beauty of this, as I mentioned before, is that we'll start keeping track of your progress for you. So based on the POMS reports and attendance and new memberships and all of that, it will say, okay, well, here's what your goal was and here is your actual results. And we'll take a look at some real results to see what that looks like. But the first thing we do need to do is we need to go in and establish our goals. So we click on Enter Chapter Goals, and that will bring us into the function. Now, the first screen that pops up, before we do anything else, we do need to establish a couple of things about our chapter. And these are, really things that are going to stay with the chapter over a longer period of time than just the amount of time that you might be entering the goals for. Those two things are the long-term vision and the mission statement. So the long-term vision is really where you want to get to with your chapter. And a lot of chapters even use this as an opening statement during their chapter meeting, as we do up in the Shiver region. So this is for my Burr chapter, one of my test regions up in Antarctica. But what we came up with for our long-term vision, this is kind of our rally cry for our chapter, is that we want to grow the chapter to be the largest chapter in the entire continent. In addition, we wish to be the #1 chapter in closed business and referrals within a 200-mile radius. So that, again, that is our rally cry. That's our vision statement. That's where we want to get to, more on a 30,000 foot CEO level overview of the chapter. Now, the mission statement, that is kind of your guiding principles of how you are going to achieve those goals. So what is going to make your chapter unique? What's going to make your chapter wonderful in the pursuit of that long-term vision? So the mission statement that we came up with in our chapter was to help members increase their business through a structured, positive, and professional word-of-mouth program that enables them to develop long-term, meaningful relationships with qualified business professionals and create positive community goodwill. So that is our long-term vision and mission statement for our chapter, and that's something that you really only need to establish once. And if your chapter has been using this goals program for quite some time, then what you'll see is that the long-term vision and mission statement is already filled out for you. Now, it's up to your leadership team. If you'd like to make tweaks to it or make edits to it, you are more than welcome to do that at this point. Now, before we go and click the Go button, we need to establish the time frame that we'd like to set the goals for. Now, you can choose any time frame that you want to. You can even go back and historically input your goals if you want to. But by default, what it's going to do is it's always going to bring up the next 6-month period. And the 6-month periods in BNI typically go from October through March and April through September. Those are our 2 times of year that we typically change over our leadership team. So our next goal period that we would be establishing right now is this upcoming October, so next month through March of next year. And this will always work on a 6-month basis. Now, if you want to go ahead and establish a whole year's worth of goals, that's fine. You can establish this 6 months and then go in and put a start date of April 2016 and establish the next 6 months after that. Or let's say that you get started and you only do the first couple of months and you just want to start from December onwards. That's absolutely fine. You can really choose any start date you want to. Now, I'm just going to keep this at starting in October, which is our next 6-month period. And I'm going to click Go. And what this does is it brings up essentially a giant spreadsheet that we are going to fill out with all sorts of information of what we want to be tracking with our chapter. And what you'll see here is the time frame along the top. So we have October, November, January, February, March in here. And then we have sections for each of what we call the chapter success drivers. Again, that's the chapter success drivers. And those success drivers are attendance, one-to-ones, CEUs, visitors, new members, total number of members in the chapter, number of referrals, and thank you for closed business. So what we're wanting to do is to establish where we want to get to month by month for this entire 6-month period. Now, along with establishing the numerical goals for each of those, you'll also see a couple of options in there for mechanisms. You have a mechanism 1 and a mechanism 2. And what mechanisms are things or activities that you can do in your chapter, or even things that you want to concentrate on as a leadership team to help to support those monthly goals. So we'll get into some examples of that as we start going through each of these goals and some ideas for how to fill those out. Before we get started on the actual numbers for some of these things, there is one other decision that you need to make, and that's right up at the top of the screen. You'll see that there's a little radio button there that says enter goals for whole chapter or per member. And this is really a preference of how you'd like to calculate some of these numbers, most notably the numbers like one-to-one CEUs and referrals. When we're working with a whole chapter number, we're essentially working with a very large number. So we're looking at, for example, one-to-ones, we're looking at the total number of one-to-ones that the whole chapter is going to do, as opposed to the total number of one-to-ones for each member of the group. You do have to establish a set way that you're going to do this for the entire report. You can't switch back and forth and some goals per member and some goals for chapter. It's an all or nothing decision. I can tell you that 99% of the people that use this functionality do use the whole chapter numbers. And the other thing I'll tell you is that the per member numbers will be based on your target number of members when it's looking at the results. Okay. Let's go ahead and start taking a look at some of the individual goals here. Now, one of the easiest ones to start with is the first one on here, and that is the attendance percentage. So the way that I like to work on really all of the goals here is we kind of already know where we are. The next thing to establish is really where do we want to get to at the end of this time period. So we know where we are right now. We know where we want to get to 6 months from now. So, for example, I know that up in Antarctica, mostly due to the weather, we have a really hard time getting to the chapter meeting, but that's something that our leadership team really wants to work on for this upcoming 6-month term. And I know right now we're averaging somewhere in the vicinity of about an 80% attendance rate for our chapter. Now, by the end of October, I want to make sure that we're just maintaining that. We have a lot of things to concentrate on, so I'm not going to bump that up too much for this first month. But I know that within this 6-month period, we'd like to get up to a solid 90%. Well, that's a nice steady increase over the course of that 6 months that we can gradually get from 80 to 90%. So that's about a 2% increase each month. So I'm going to now basically split the difference between where we're starting and where we're going to. So 82 and then 84 and then 86, 88, and we'll be at that 90% in 6 months. Now, mechanisms, this is where I actually find the most helpful thing about this goal setting process. Now, one of the things, and I don't know if I mentioned this at the beginning, but I am a member of BNI as well. I still go to weekly chapter meetings. I'm a member of the Wakefield chapter. We actually meet tomorrow morning here in Wakefield, Rhode Island. And I've been on just about every position on and off of leadership teams for the past 13 years. One of the struggles that we often have as members, as well as being on the leadership team, is that we are extremely busy individuals. So a lot of us have our home lives, we have kids, we have spouses, we have our businesses, we have employees that we have to manage on top of being the chief cook, bottle washer for our companies. So remembering to do things at BNI can sometimes be a challenge. We have our 90-minute meeting and we say, oh, you know what, it would be great. I really want to do an educational moment on et cetera, next week. And then all of a sudden next week comes around, you're like, oh, I forgot to mention that to the educational coordinator. I'll mention it to him today. Then all of a sudden the education coordinator runs out of the meeting early, so you didn't get a chance to talk to him. And now another week goes by before you get to it. And before you know it, 6 months have gone by or a whole year has gone by. So what these mechanisms are designed to do is to kind of be your reminder on a monthly basis of things that you wanted to focus on or activities that you wanted to do as a leadership team on a month-by-month basis, so you can plan out your next 6 months or even your next year with those activities. So what are some mechanisms that we can use to help to drive up our attendance percentage? So one thing that we may want to consider doing, right away at the start of that term is we want to make sure that we're actually adhering to the attendance policy. And one of the ways to do that is we need to make sure that the vice president is sending out control letters for absences. So starting right away, we're going to do an educational moment. I'm going to abbreviate that as EM for educational moment on attendance policy. Okay. And then we are going to, for the first couple of months, we're going to concentrate on making sure the VP is sending out control letters. And that's something that, we're going to have to concentrate on and make sure they get in the habit of for the first couple of months. So I'm going to put this in as a mechanism to remind myself to concentrate on that, not just the first month, but hopefully by the first month, we're not going to have too many absences. And we really need to be looking at that, especially in the second and third months. So I'm going to extend that all the way out to the third month. And then we can also put in some other mechanisms. So, maybe to increase attendance percentage, and the next month we're going to, I don't know, we're going to reinforce the substitute policy and things like that. And we can go and fill out mechanisms for this for really the entire 6-month period. Now, if you'd like some ideas for mechanisms and things that you can do, click on the chapter goal guide up here at the top. In the blue bar, there's a button that says Chapter Goal Guide. And what this will do is give you some common ideas for things that people use to increase attendance, for example. So one could be the, oh, that's a great one. Acknowledge people for perfect attendance monthly. So every month, at the end of the month or at the beginning of the next month, you want to say, we want to congratulate, John and Jim and Susie for having perfect attendance last month. Instead of being a negative, it's a positive reinforcement. So that's a great thing. I'm actually going to right click on this and copy it. And I am going to make sure that that is part of our monthly repertoire, and I'm going to follow up on that in December. So you get the idea, and take some time, sit with your leadership team and fill out some mechanisms as well as the goals. Let's just quickly go through the rest of these goals and see if we have some other ideas for the other chapter success drivers here. So let me scroll down a little bit. I always find that the next easiest one to do, and one that actually defines just about every other goal on this sheet, is going to be the size of your chapter. So I'm actually going to scroll down and skip to the number of members in chapter. You notice that these are just mostly in alphabetical order. So the number of members in chapter. Now, right now our chapter is, unfortunately, we've dwindled a little bit, and our chapter is down to about 20 members. Now, I'd love to say that we're going to get to 50 members at the end of 6 months, but not quite sure that's realistic. So I'm going to set a little bit more moderate of a goal here and say that we're going to get to 30 members. So we'd really like to grow by a solid 10 members. That's a 50% growth over the next 6 months. So again, you see I started with the beginning of what we're at now and where we want to get to. And again, mostly because I like easy math, this is going to be 22, 24, 26, 28, and 30. So we're averaging really 2 members per month. And we can come up with some mechanisms to help support those goals. Now, I personally like to keep these nice and easy. You can, of course, make these much more realistic or complicated depending on how detailed you want to get. My recommendation to you, though, is I hate to see people get lost in the minutia. It's better to get something down. It's better to put something on paper and get started with it, then go back and edit it later than it is to get so overwhelmed with complicated measurements and things like that, and then it never happens. So what I would say is, we know in BNI that the harder months to grow the chapter are going to be December and January. There's a lot of vacations going on. Especially December, there's a lot of holidays that are happening. People are traveling to visit family and things like that. So realistically, we may not really grow by 2 that month. So that may actually stay at 22 for a couple of months. But then in February, when people are coming off of that busy time, we're going to have a big visitors day, and we may actually grow. We're looking to target 6 new members that month. So you can, if you want to, keep some of those things in mind. But I'm going to try to keep it a little simpler just to start with. Mechanisms. Again, mechanisms for the growth in chapter, as I mentioned. These middle months here are going to be kind of tough months, generally speaking, with all the holidays that are happening. So one thing that we can do during that period is let's play the BNI game, because the BNI game is a great way to get the chapter motivated, a great way to have a little friendly competition, and you can end it off with a nice holiday party as a celebration for the end of the game. For anybody that doesn't know what the BNI game is, the BNI game is where you break your chapter up into a couple of different units, 3 or 4 or 5 different teams, depending on the size of your chapter. Usually you want to have 4, 5, 6 members on each team. And what you do is you compete against each other. So everything that you're doing in BNI is worth a certain amount of points. For example, showing up early or on time may be worth 5 points, and maybe bringing a referral that week is worth 10 points, and having a one-to-one is worth 7 points, and bringing a visitor, let's say that you really need to grow the chapter, so bringing a visitor, that's worth 25 points, and if that visitor becomes a member, maybe that's worth 50 points. So you can really customize this to accentuate the things and the positive behaviors that you want to enforce. But this is something that's going to take course over the November and December months. And here's another little hint, is that these mechanisms may support multiple goals. So what other things does it help with, the BNI game? Well, it helps with referrals. It helps with thank you for closed business. It also helps with new memberships. It helps with visitors. See how we're just taking this, and as soon as we start establishing some common things, we can see how some of those mechanisms are going to help to support multiple goals along the way. But take some time again. You can look at the chapter goal guide to come up with some easily done things. Sid, I do see your 2 questions. I will get to those in just a second, okay? All right, so now that we've established our number of members in chapter, we really can use this number to start driving a lot of the rest of these. And it's pretty much, pretty straight downhill from here, getting the rest of our goals established. So now that we know that we want to grow by 2 members per month, we know pretty much how many new members we need each month as well, right? We need 2 new members per month. Well, actually, that's only partially true. What we really probably need is 3 new members per month. And the reason for that is that every single chapter out there does have some level of attrition. People are going to join BNI and people are going to leave BNI. And a lot of times they leave BNI for good reasons. They get too busy. They switch jobs. They move out of town. They get married. They have a kid. Whatever the reasons might be that they can't participate anymore, there will always be a certain percentage of people that we have no control over, that they left the chapter. On average, that attrition rate is about 1 member per month. So instead of actually needing 2 members per month, we really kind of need 3 members per month in order to have a net of 2 members per month. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to account for our 1, and then from there on we're going to need really 3 new members per month going forward. And again, we can put some mechanisms in to support that. Now, where do we get new members from? Well, we get new members from visitors. Visitors turn into members. And you can look at your traffic lights report, or you can just kind of estimate, what is your conversion rate? So how many visitors that come to your chapter put in an application and then are accepted by the membership committee? Is it 100%? If so, I'd love to have a one-to-one with you so we can learn some of your secrets. But is it 10%? Is it 50%? Is it 70%, 20%? What is it for your chapter? Now, typically it's going to be somewhere between 20 and 50%. So let's just, I'm going to give you a really good conversion rate of, let's call it 30%. So in order to get 1 new membership, you really need to bring 3 visitors. So this first month, we want to make sure that we have 3 visitors. If we need 3 new memberships, we really need to make sure that we have 9 visitors, since 1 in 3 is going to submit an application. And maybe your conversion rate is 25%, in which case you'd need 12 new visitors per month. So really you got to go by historically, what is it with your chapter? And if that conversion rate's really, really low, maybe 5%, 10%, maybe you need to start implementing certain things to help with the new memberships, such as doing the visitor orientation to help to increase that conversion rate. All right, now the rest of these, total number of one-to-ones, CEUs, and number of referrals. Now, in our region, we like to have our members do 1 of each per week. So bring one referral per week, have at least one one-to-one per week, and one CEU per week. So that's our goal for our members in our chapters in our region. You may have something different. It may be higher, it may be lower, but I find that to be a nice even number. So really that's 4 per month per member. Now what we want to make sure we do though is we want to base this on our number of members in chapter. So in that case, we want to make sure that this really number of referrals is going to be 80, and then 88, and then 96, and so on and so forth, all the way up to 120. And those numbers are pretty much going to be the same for our CEUs as well as our total number of one-to-ones. And then finally, we have our thank you for closed business. Thank you for closed business. I like to look at this and say, listen, you know what? We want to be a $1 million chapter this year, or we want to be a $5 million chapter this year, and then divide that by 12. So if you want to be $1 million chapter, you're going to have to bring, on average, $100,000 per month. So I'm going to go ahead and take $100,000. We want to be $1 million chapter. Every month we need to bring in about $100,000. That'll be a $1.2 million chapter. Once you've established these and you've put your mechanisms in, and I actually recommend doing this quite often, hitting the save button. You can go back anytime you want to and edit these, by the way, even after you've already saved them. Let's say that you're 3 months into this and you're way off on your goals. You wanted to grow by 35 members and it's just not happening. Go back and edit these. They are not etched in stone. It's there to be a tool to help you to grow. So if it's going to end up being a discouragement, go back, modify them, change them, make them your own. All right, so we've established our goals. Now let's see what this looks like. So go to Operations Chapter again, and now we can go in and view the chapter goals. So if I go back to Manage Goals, I can go to View Chapter Goals. By default, it's going to show me the last 6 months, or really what the current 6-month period is. If I want to see what I just put in, I'm going to change this out to the October 6-month period. And click View, and this will give me the results spreadsheet of our chapter goals. Now, we don't have any results yet because none of this has happened, but I know that there was a question from Sid earlier that said for the chapter goals, how can I get a report for this to print out? A lot of people might find it easier to do this on paper first. What I say is, do this view chapter goals. You can even do this before you've entered anything in. And I would say export it to Excel. And from here, you can doctor this up a little bit or make the mechanisms bigger, what have you, in order to have a paper format to work with. So that would be my recommendation for you on that. So hope that helps, Sid. All right, but let me show you a real region. As I said, this was developed by a man named Tom Fleming from the Florida region. He owns a couple of regions here in the United States, and he has been using this goals program for years and years and years. It's not an exact duplicate of what he's doing down there, but it's pretty close based on all of the same principles. So one of his regions is this Florida Central West region. And pretty much I know that in this region I can pick any random chapter and be able to view their chapter goals. And here we can see what this starts to look like once you use the goals for a while. So we can see here their long-term vision here in the Profit Makers chapter is they want to rebuild the chapter to 60 members and reach $6 million in thank you for closed business. Their mission statement, success is a choice and we choose success. So their attendance percentage, they were shooting for 100% every month, and they got pretty close to that, 94, 96, 99, 95, 95, and 97. So we can see their actuals. We can see what they did as mechanisms. Total number of one-to-ones. You can see what they put in for their goals and what their actual results were. Same thing for CEUs, for visitors, for new memberships, number of members. And you see, this is a successful chapter, by the way. 52 members, 51 members, and they're still using the goals program. Number of referrals, and thank you for closed business. So these are all things that this chapter has done. And again, the great part is you can go back to this report and see your progress through that time period. All right, so we're at the bottom of the hour. I actually went a couple of minutes over today. I apologize for those of you that might be on tight schedules. I am going to get to, we have about a half a dozen questions so far. I am going to go and answer all of your questions. For anybody that does need to take off right away, thank you so much for being here. This entire thing is being recorded, including the questions. So if you do need to leave right away, you can come back and check out the recording for answers to all of the questions. You'll be able to find the recording on the support site as well as at youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. All right, let's take a look at some of these questions. So Sid says, what do you think about using an average for our regional chapters for individuals and likewise for the entire chapter? So I think you're saying take your regional chapter average and make that the goals for each of the chapters. We'd probably have to have a longer discussion on this. I think that may be a worthwhile goal for the struggling chapters, chapters that are smaller that need to get up to the average, but that won't work very well for the people that are in the average or above the average. So yeah, I don't think you're able to, because every chapter is different, use one standard set of goals for everybody. But again, that would be worthwhile goals for these struggling chapters to at least get up to the average. Does that make sense, Sid? Does that help? Let's see. Sid says, I presume that the goal guides you're using as examples are shown in the chapter goal guide for every activity. So yes, in the chapter goal guide, so if I go back to enter the chapter goals, I can click on this chapter goal guide. There's attendance, one-to-one, CEUs, visitors, memberships. They don't have much for new members in chapter, but referrals per month and revenue generated. So yes, those are all listed there. If you'd prefer, you can highlight and copy and paste that all into like a Word document or something if you'd like to keep it open all the time. Jeff says, how do we get the historic goals for the chapter? So the historic goals, again, you'd only be able to get them if your chapter was using them all of this time. So if I go into manage goals, and I'm just in this BNI Profit Makers chapter because I have access to it in the system, but I can go back to, for this chapter, it's the early days of this. Let's go to maybe 2013. And let's see if they had their goals. And you see, they've been using this for so long, since 2013, that I can go back and take a look historically at these goals. So if your chapter's been using the function, you can go back as far as you want to. Does that make sense, Jeffrey? And along the same lines, Sid asks, can we pull up the goals of these successful chapters? You cannot, unfortunately. Well, if you are a director consultant or if you are a executive director, you can get into this function for any of the chapters that you support. However, as a member of a single chapter, as the leadership team of a single chapter, you can only get into your own chapter's goals. So you would have to talk with your director consultant or your area director or your executive director who can help you with that. Now, there's also a question here from Kelly that says, can this be viewed by members? That will depend on your region and the permissions in your region. By default, All members have access to view the chapter goals. However, only leadership team, president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and the director consultant for the chapter can enter the goals. So anybody can view them, but only the leadership team can enter them. So hopefully that answers your question, Kelly. And hopefully that answers your question, Deborah. Deborah says, which leadership team member is responsible for entering the goals? That is more of a regional practice. Really, in an ideal world, you are going to sit down and have a leadership team meeting with the members of your leadership team. Now that can be just president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, or an extended leadership team. You'll establish these goals. Maybe it's easier to do it on a piece of paper first, and then just pick somebody, whoever's best with computers or types quickly or whatever it might be, can go back and enter them into BNI Connect. Heather says, my question mark button says I'm an invalid user. Heather, that sometimes happens if you have been in and out of BNI or had multiple records and now your email address is associated with a new one. Basically, not a big deal. Just shoot me an email, support@bniconnect.com, support@bniconnect.com. We will take care of that for you. Just say I'm having problems with my question mark, and we will get that resolved for you. It has to do with the support system is actually a separate system from BNI Connect. So we share a user base, but sometimes it gets confused. So hopefully that helps. All right, Jeffrey says he's a new president and there's no goals showing. And again, once you become the president on October 1st, then that should be, these options should be there for entering the goals. Kelly says, is that your direct email? That is the support inbox, which I do monitor personally. So support@bniconnect.com. Support@bniconnect.com. Let's see, Sid says, getting visitors, especially prospective members, is the absolute hardest thing to do. We're aware of the professions not in our chapter, and we've got a plan to focus our efforts toward them, but getting visitors is the most difficult activity our chapter encounters. Suggestions? My suggestion is to be less selective with your inviting. That is my personal recommendation. My opinion is stop trying to sell membership. Stop concentrating on just getting new members. Invite people to meet all these people that you do business with. So you have this great chapter full of people. Your number one focus should be just bringing people to meet them at your meeting. So introducing them to that awesome, mortgage broker that you have in your chapter, a real estate agent, or whatever it might be. Now, once they come and they meet that person, or once they come and they see how great your chapter is and see all the business you're passing, seeing the thank you for closed business, seeing the excitement and the camaraderie, then they'll say, you know what, I kind of like this. However, they may say, this isn't for me. And that's okay too, because as long as you increase the exposure, as long as they got a benefit. See, one of the great things about visitors, even if they never join BNI, they view a BNI chapter like a shopping mall. So when they come to a meeting and everybody goes around and they do their 60-second presentation or their weekly presentation, 45 seconds, 60 seconds, whatever it might be at your chapter, they say, oh, you know what? I've been meaning to get my gutters cleaned. Oh, you know what? I need to get my car serviced. You know what? I've been saying I've been going to get some estate planning. I was going to get a will done, and I haven't gotten around to it yet. They end up using the services of a lot of members. So it's a great mindset to get into, is not just inviting for the sake of new members, because then we just say, oh, this person will never join. There's no need to invite them to our chapter. It's okay, just invite them. Some of the people that you thought would never join are the first ones that submit an application. So does that help, Sid? Does that help at all? So Steve says, Steve Elliott, he's an admin, a long time BNI supporter in Arizona, says, take some time to review the BNI Connect support team webinar on visitor management. So that's a great suggestion. Thank you. And if you don't have access to that, check with your executive director. All right, Sid had the last question so far. Does anybody else have any additional questions whatsoever? I'd be happy to answer those questions at this time. While you're thinking of any last minute questions, just a quick reminder, this is being recorded. Check the support site and or our YouTube channel. I would also absolutely love it if you gave us a like on Facebook, facebook.com/BNI Connect Global. We do some reminders and tips and tricks and stuff like that up on our Facebook channel as well. So please, I'd love it if you gave us a like up here. In addition, and finally, a great referral for me is to please let people know about these webinars. If you found that today's session was helpful, we do every month, we do a series of 9 webinars. So the first 5 webinars have to do with members, and especially the new members in your chapter, getting them integrated into BNI Connect right away and completing their profile and passing referrals and using the connection feature, all of that. We have our whole October series already lined up, so a good referral for me is to please share those links to register for the webinars and get people on them. You can also share the recordings from the support site as well. So our next webinar and our last webinar of September is going to be tomorrow, Thursday, September 24th. We start at the same bat time, same bat channel, noon Pacific and 3 p.m. Eastern. Tomorrow's webinar is going to be a longer webinar. It's going to be a 1-hour webinar. We're going to go through every single function available to leadership teams. So we're going to show you, especially if you're an incoming leadership team, how to enter a POMS report, how to schedule a speaker for the speaker rotation, how to go in and assign a mentor and a mentee, how to use the various reports in the system, and some suggestions for how to increase the number of referrals, for example, that your chapter is doing. So please do join us. If your other leadership team people weren't here today, encourage them to be there tomorrow as well. So Heather says, will we have access by then to walk through? Probably not by tomorrow, because you won't be assigned the permissions until October 1st. So it'll be good to review it. In October, though, by the way, I'm doing those right in the beginning, or as close to the beginning as I could. So October 14th, I'll be doing that webinar again. All right. So Kelly says, it's right on the support site. It's actually the last one in this series. It's right here on the list. Here, I'm going to drop it into the chat window for you if you need to register for it. Or you can share that link with people as well. Okay, so I dropped that right into the chat window for you guys. All right, and if that's the last question, I'm going to sign off and say thank you guys so much again for being here, and I look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. Happy connecting, everyone.